A Northwest Washington mid-December scene. An extended Jewish family has gathered on a Sunday afternoon, which in this era means that there are several non-Jewish family members present. In one corner, people are discussing the latest novels by James McBride and Gabrielle Zevin. In another corner, people are discussing the pros and cons of artificial intelligence. In yet another, the Barbie movie is being compared with the Oppenheimer epic, while a debate rages in another about the ongoing protest movement in Israel. In the far corner, Hanukkah candles are being set in place, while a Christmas wreath is being hung on the outside door. Everyone is animated. The room is alive. This is a world we can readily picture. It is our world. These are the imagined scenes that have passed through my mind over and over since Louise and I saw the Tom Stoppard play Leopoldstadt in New York several months ago. The play for me was both stunning and haunting. I am in some ways possessed by it. There is a great deal I would like to say about it, but won't, because for those of you who have not seen it, I don't want to give away very much. I highly recommend it, and should it come to Washington, which I really hope that it does, I would absolutely go see it again. There is a lot there. So, to give away just a bit, the play is set in Vienna and covers the years 1899 to 1955. The opening scene of the play is the inspiration for my own just shared imagination. The scene, a Jewish family gathering in 1899 Vienna in the Jewish section Leopoldstadt. They're in a beautiful large living room. Siblings, cousins, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, all in the grandmother's home. In one corner, a Christmas tree is being decorated with a Jewish star put on the top. Theodor Herzl's still new book, The Jewish State, is being discussed in another. Schoenberg and Mahler are being talked about in another. The family Passover Seder, still months away, is being planned in another. Even today, this is, in a sense, our world, or the world we have both inherited and recreated here in the United States. It could be any family in any contemporary American congregation. There is joy and optimism, confidence, secure in their acculturation and position in the world. The opening scene is an invitation to imagine Freud, Adler, Frankl, Wittgenstein, my favorite, Mahler, Schoenberg, Chrysler, Kafka, Roth, Zweig, and Herzl. The list feels endless, yet these are just a few of the more familiar names of Viennese Jewish or Jewish-connected giants in the arts and sciences who left their mark on history. It is staggering, this list, in its erudition and its contribution to what we call the human project. We in the audience who are looking into this 1899 Vienna scene from our year of 2023 sit enraptured, while simultaneously very much on the edge of our seats in fear. We sit watching and waiting for the ominous knock at the door that we know is coming. Since that May afternoon when Louise and I saw the play, I have not been able to get it out of my mind. You can ask Louise. I speak of it when I lie down and when I rise up. And for me, this represents something very new. This is my 41st Rosh Hashanah at Temple Micah, and I have never given a High Holy Day sermon on anti-Semitism. I have now said the word, but wish to say something more, something bigger and more elusive. Anti-Semitism, we know, is always the canary in the mine shaft. All over the world, liberal democracy is being challenged. The fight in Israel is simultaneously frightening and inspiring, and I will talk about that next week on Yom Kippur, Kol Nidrei. We are very much, all of us, on the edge of our seats, but this is not a play. The values and assumptions that underline democracy, liberal democracy, are under attack. What happens to a democratic society when we lose our collective sense of what truth is, of what facts are real? What happens when our civic virtues are eroded and there are no longer guardrails protecting our institutions? What happens when groups of people are othered? We know too well what happens when liberalism fails. Our people took and barely survived the advanced course, to borrow the phrase coined by a member of this community. Leopoldstadt's opening scene, therefore, brought to mind a question that a colleague and friend asked me very recently in an email. He wrote, "You've said many times Jews need to be defenders of Enlightenment values. Do you mean by that, at least in part, defenders of true liberalism?" In a word, yes, for good reason. Liberalism, the underpinning of liberal democracy, for me includes the following incomplete list: a core commitment to human equality and human rights for all people, a core commitment to a government of checks and balances that ensures and protects these rights, a commitment to public education for all, a commitment to tolerance and respect for differing opinions, a commitment to norms of civility, a commitment to public safety for all, a commitment to free speech, free press, the right to privacy, the right to challenge the government to address wrongs, a commitment to where such is the norm, where such a norm as, quote, "I disagree with everything you say, but will defend to the death your right to say it," prevails. A commitment to science as a path to truth. All of this feels fragile in our America. All of it. Furthermore, I tend to see all of these in a symbiotic relationship with my essential Jewish commitments and my embrace of that part of the Western world that was opened by the European Enlightenment. My Judaism is an Enlightenment Judaism. I could not love my Judaism any more than I do. Just as the ancient rabbis, in the wake of Roman conquest, destruction, and exile, radically recreated their inherently biblically rooted religion, so my Judaism, dare I say our Judaism, is dependent upon the revolution in thought and values that the European Enlightenment brought to the Western world and forever impacted the rabbinic Judaism that was part of that world. This includes an understanding of Judaism as an intellectual, ethical, artistic, and spiritual quest that must be open not only to our inherited texts of the past, and we have to study those texts and master those texts and love those texts and criticize those texts, but we also must be equally open to the culture around us. I cannot have my Judaism without ongoing ethical prodding, without a compelling aesthetic, and without a prophetic yearning. My Judaism requires always the voice of my conscience within. My beloved teacher, Rabbi Eugene Borowitz, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, may the memory of a righteous one be a blessing. My teacher, Rabbi Borowitz, sought to teach us all that personal autonomy was essential to a true liberal Judaism. And Rabbi Larry Hoffman, in his usual brilliance, wrote this very recently, quote, "Reform Judaism invented the idea that authentic Judaism is not doing what our ancestors did, but doing what they would have done if they were still alive today," end of quote. Our Judaism rests on the Enlightenment values that imprinted themselves on the European founders of our Reform Judaism. Defending the Enlightenment means defending the right to a multivocal society with a crowded public square filled with animated yet respectful debate. Our public square today has been radically injured. It is being shredded to tatters by those who do not wish to debate anything. Arlie Russell Hochschild, in her oft-cited 2016 book, Strangers in Their Own Land, described what she calls the deep story of the left. That is the narrative or picture through which many of us see our country. And this is now a quote of Hochschild. People stand around a large public square inside of which are creative science museums for kids, public art, theater programs, libraries, schools, a state-of-the-art public infrastructure available for use by all. They are fiercely proud of it. Some of them built it. Outsiders can join those standing around the square, since a lot of people who are insiders now were outsiders in the past. Incorporation and acceptance of difference feels like American values represented in the Statue of Liberty. End of quote of Hochschild. She goes on to describe how what she calls marauders begin to invade the public square and steal chunks of the buildings. She continues, again a quote, "Those guarding the public square watch helplessly as those who've dismantled it construct private McMansions with the same bricks, privatizing the public realm." This is our world. A public square under attack and a public realm raided and privatized. Public education, once the very ladder to the middle class, is systematically being dismantled, as now state-funded universities are being censored, with the liberal arts being stripped away. Witness just this week the University of West Virginia. Universities are being censored. Professors' reading lists are being overseen by state bureaucrats who take orders from their religious right. We live in a country where a fifth-grade teacher has been placed on administrative leave for reading the book "My Shadow is Purple" in her classroom. Yet no one seems to care that school districts across the country are severely underfunded. How many stories must we read about teachers buying school supplies with their own money? When does our country simply become utterly embarrassed? And please don't think that our Jewish world will be free from a culture that bans books. Earlier this month, a Florida Jewish community center withdrew an invitation for a scheduled speaking engagement with a Jewish writer, Rachel Beanland, whose novel is set in Richmond in the early 19th century. The writer was asked, quote, to steer clear of some topics in her talk, with the rationale, quote, "This is Florida and our politics around the black community, the history of the Civil War, and education in general are complicated." The author responded to the JCC by saying, "Any presentation I give is likely to address slavery and the rights of women." The JCC then responded to Ms. Beanland, "After much discussion and debate, we have decided that this book is not the right choice for the scheduled event," adding, "Our decision is very much affected by the current political climate here in Florida." After all this went public, the Jewish Community Center, of course, beat a hasty retreat and has reportedly fired the employee for, quote, "other reasons," who handled the matter. The center's management also was reported as saying that the email's wording, quote, "wasn't reflective of the actual reasons why the center canceled the talk," end of quote. But the community center then issued the following invitation to Ms. Beanland: "Maybe later in the year you could come back to help educate us," they wrote. The author responded with, "I told him that's not really my job," end of quote. She said then that she received a second straightforward invitation to speak about the book, to which she said, quote, "I have no interest in speaking to this Jewish community center." This is what happens when our civic values are eroded. The infection, cancel culture, spreads everywhere. And now an aside. Upon reading of this travesty, I immediately reached out to invite Ms. Beanland to speak at Temple Micah. Ms. Beanland will be speaking at Temple Micah on her new novel, The House is on Fire, on Sunday afternoon, October 29th. Mark your calendars now. We want an overflowing crowd. Can you promise me an overflowing crowd? And an overflowing Zoom for her appearance. By the way, this is all part of the aside, everyone in my family read Rachel Beanland's first novel, Florence Adler Swims Forever, and we all loved it. Now back to the text. But remember that date. What's the date? Okay, perfect. There is, you see, a segment of our nation that is seeking to destroy our future. I think of John Dewey, who wrote, quote, "Democracy has to be born anew every generation, and education is its midwife." A simple truth is that liberal democracy requires a crowded public square overflowing with respectful debate. So, in May, as Louise and I left Leopoldstadt and walked through always dizzying and enlivening streets of Manhattan, I said to her something like the following. In the history of Western civilization as we know it, authoritarian regimes always seek to do two things. One, clamp down and control intellectual, cultural creativity, and two, come after the Jews. In some ways, the two are one. We are the Enlightenment Jews who must rise up and defend liberalism. If not us, who? Our Enlightenment Judaism stands on two things: a very few self-evident truths, human dignity, freedom, opportunity for all, and a passion for searching for truth. Science, philosophy, the arts. These are all paths for searching for something more, discovering something more about the human condition. These encompass the great optimism of a true liberalism with its promise of freedom and the unleashing of human potential for all. And its recognition, this is so important, in its recognition that what we call scientific truths are true until they are not. Science grows and learns. This is what human progress is, the ability to learn. And this is an insight also of the Jewish experience. We live with few certainties and many questions. We are open, searching, tentative. This is our inheritance. There is always one more commentary, one more thought, one more book. We are always searching for truth. Our library is overflowing. The Bible's own story of revelation, along with a particular line of commentary on Revelation itself, seems to capture the uncertainty that is at the very heart of our Jewish human project. And I've tried to capture it here on this page 5 and 6 of what we have sermon text, which I'm just going to describe, but take this home with you. Don't read it now. I'm going to explain it to you right now. Moses has come down from Sinai with the 10 Commandments. He's seen the Israelite hordes worshiping the golden calf. Moses roars into the camp. Enraged, he destroys the tablets of the commandments. You've seen the movie. He destroys the golden calf, which he burns and melts and makes the Israelites drink it. Finally, he gathers his army of Levites and kills 3,000 Israelites. It's all there, the book of Exodus, chapter 32. It's a biblical scene if ever there was one. Exodus, chapter 32. And now it's time for Moses to go back up to Mount Sinai to encounter God once again. He again seeks those commandments. But this time, he has to carve out the stone himself. God is not giving it to him anymore. But this time, Moses wants even more, because this is a different Moses. This is a Moses that is destroyed and killed. He's led an army. He's led an army to a camp against his own people, and he's killed 3,000. And now Moses wants reassurance from God that somehow this all makes sense. Moses wants a guarantee, what we might call certainty. So Moses asks God for Moses to be allowed to see God's face. Is this thing really real, God? I need to see your face. And we know the answer. God says no. No one can see God's face and live. No one. No certainty. Moses given hints but no guarantees. Moses pushes on with hope but no promise. So there's a 19th century Midrashic text which I've summarized and captured a little bit on your sheet that suggests that Moses is seeking truth, but he's offered in response a search for truth. The Midrash compares this to a Mishnaic text. The Midrash quotes the Mishnah. Quote, "A single hour of repentance and good deeds in this world is more delightful than an entire lifetime in the world to come." An insightful text on this reads, "They said this because one who arrives at truth and thus to the life of the world to come is now at rest from all striving, having arrived at the desired destination. And one works towards something of supreme value, the striving itself is greater good than the reward yielded." End of quote. Michael Gelvin, a contemporary philosopher, comments on this with the following, quote, "There is suggestion in this story that only an infinite being can possess truth, and that to see God is to forfeit one's humanity." In other words, being human is about search and growth, but never final certainty. And when you think you have final certainty, you are by definition forfeiting a piece of your humanity. A search for truth forms the very heart of the Jewish narrative. It is essential to what we call the human project. The search for truth is likewise the bedrock of academic freedom. The book banners of this era are denying American students a true and complete exploration of our American past. When state school systems forbid truthful examination of our nation's history, including chattel slavery and Jim Crow racism, we are in a very dangerous place. Books on the Holocaust are being banned in some libraries and school systems. Holocaust deniers are having a field day. This is what happens when a president says after murderous Nazis march, quote, that there were very fine people on both sides. America is not in a culture war, as if we are arguing about what kinds of movies are better, comedies or thrillers, the Barbie movie or American Prometheus. We are fighting to turn back American fascism. It is that simple. And this is our fight. Our Judaism doubts all authority. This is our DNA back to Abraham, who smashed the idols, and Moses, who was challenged by his own people at every turn. We are allergic to absolutes that are dictated to us. Our Judaism loves questions and tentative answers, no matter how unpleasant. Yehuda Amichai, that great poet laureate of Israel, wrote all this as only a brilliant poet can in a simple poem. The poem is titled Hamakom Shabo Anu Tzodkim, in the place where we are right. This is the poem in English. From the place where we are right, flowers will never grow in the spring. The place where we are right is hard and trampled like a yard, but doubts and loves dig up the world like a mole, a plow, and a whisper will be heard in the place where the ruined house once stood. Amichai is teaching us about civilized conversation in the public square, about a vibrant questioning culture. What about that for a bumper sticker or a t-shirt? America, a vibrant questioning culture. On Rosh Hashanah, we strive to recreate and renew ourselves as well as the world around us. Our prayer book reminds us that God renews creation each and every day. Let this Rosh Hashanah come to remind us that every day, as inheritors of Enlightenment liberalism, we renew ourselves in co-creating this vision for our world. Defending liberalism means defying the book banners who are really book burners. It means opposing those who want to limit questioning. It means allowing speakers of all sorts, to speak on our university campuses. To shut down free speech on a college campus because you disagree with the speaker is unconscionable, And this is what has happened on our university campuses today. In short, liberalism means defending an open mind, defending the spirit of inquiry that is the Jewish way of being in the world. When I discussed this with our teacher, Rabbi Hoffman, he rightly said to me in the Zoom, in a commenting on the Talmud, even Shammai wins the argument some of the time. Defending liberalism is the Jewish mandate of our time because it embraces the right to think differently. 7 years ago, Louise and I spent several days in Berlin. As I prepared for the trip, I read the great Amos Alon classic, The Pity of It All, a portrait of the German Jewish epic, 1743 to 1933, where I was introduced to the great German Jewish writer Heinrich Heine, who, according to Alon, had to convert from Judaism in order to be published, and after converting, again according to Alon, he was racked with guilt. Why do I tell you about Heine? My most powerful Berlin memory is the memorial to the Nazi book burning, which was done in the Great Plaza in front of the Humboldt University Library. Today, in the plaza, one looks down into a window that's been cut into the pavement. And through the window, one looks down and one views a library room filled with empty shelves, enough empty shelf space to hold 10,000 books. The number of books that Hitler's henchmen burned at that very spot in May 1933. Engraved into the pavement around the window, peering into this tragic memorial, are Heine's immortal and prophetic words that he wrote in 1797. Quote, "Where they come to burn books, they will come to burn human flesh." In our era, we are seeing where they come to burn books, they are coming to ban people. Always those that hate come for the books. The authoritarians out there inevitably hate books, intellectual curiosity, and creativity, and therefore us. We are, after all, the people of the book. I might say people of many, many books. To close then with words that I always loved from Archibald MacLeish. This is a quote. "There is not a single police state of any ideology which does not confess by its Berlin walls, its nets of concentration camps, its prison hospitals for the insane, its censorship of books, its silencing of mouths, its suppression of minds, that it is afraid. And what it is most afraid of? The free man, the free mind it cannot conquer." This year, 5,784, let us defend books, learning, questions, science, an open public square. Ask a question and then ask another question. And should Leopoldstadt come to Washington, go see it. It will keep you preoccupied and asking many questions. Shana Tova, Shabbat Shalom.